So I noticed that many groups of people that want to create community together are very focused so much about the logistics of it. So how to get the land and how to get the money to buy the land. And I find that that's the easiest part. I mean, you can gather 10 people and they can, in this part of the world, and they can all get a nice sum of money. You put it together, you can get a nice piece of land. That's all it takes. It could take a year, but that's just a year. After that, once you live together, you need to learn how to communicate. You need to learn what to do once a couple breaks up, if they're couples. What happens when you fall in love, or if you get jealous, and how do you create the income, the expenses? How do you own things together? How do you change if you decided one thing, and then how do you make changes, radical changes if they're needed? So in the last 3 years, I've been doing something called the Wonder Gatherers, and it's a dream of mine that manifested, a dream that's been for years before that, of going out with people and living on what is, living on what there is. And when I was in the States, I guess I wasn't charismatic enough or mature enough to do it, but I tried to do it with friends and tell them, let's go out and see how it is to, for a few days, do it. And I was confronted with, well, they didn't take me seriously, or resistance, and it didn't manifest. It always ended up that we brought food with us. Personally, and with my family, I discovered that I really appreciate most, especially when I'm eating live food, that the food that I pick and know where it's picked, and it's tree ripened, and it's local and seasoned, is the most orgasmic, is the best tasting, the best experience, not just in the mouth, but it gives just a greater sense of connection with life. So naturally, I just felt more and more drawn to food that I pick myself, and the wild food, or food that's just more natural. And I became more confident in it. And once we returned here, I actually did meet a bunch of like a couple or 3 friends that were excited enough to do this with me. And we did a few experimental trips. The first one for a week, and then another one for 3 days, another one for 3 weeks. Just seeing how it is to live off what is. And the first time I did it, I felt, doing it for several days, that I discovered Eden. I discovered paradise, and it's right under our nose. And it's a way of being that is the most healthy and liberating and in tune and easy and joyful. And but there was one, after the 3 weeks that only me and my daughter did, there was one disadvantage that my daughter said at the end of the 3 weeks, that it was very fun, but there was no other kids. So it's like that conclusion that they made in that movie Into the Wild. What's worth freedom, I think, or joy, or happiness, if there's nobody to share it with. So we did invite some people to come, but I noticed it's very difficult for the people. And from the side, what I've seen is that the difficulty was the heart was not open. Especially with friends, people who are close to me, that already go into certain roles with me, and I go with certain roles with them. And it's something that happens, I think, in our culture, that when we think we get to know someone, and we have our limiting ideas about them, and they have their own self-imposed limiting ideas about themselves when they're around us, it's very limiting, and the heart is not completely open. And then the weather is either too hot or too cold, or there's too many mosquitoes, or there's not this food or not that food, and all these things only matter a lot. So I basically combined deep ecology work, transformational workshops I've been through, doing it while the background is not some class in Tel Aviv, but it's the nature, being outdoors, and living together off what is, which basically creates a common and very egalitarian livelihood for us during the journey. So I announced the first trip, and it was just 3 days long, which allows 1 full day from waking up until going to sleep. and it was excellent feedback. I mean, I could just get it immediately as we did it. All the people were not hungry when you get enough hugs. I joke about that B12. It doesn't matter if you're vegetarian or not. There's 40% of the population has low B12 levels, and I say B12 means that you need to have 12 hugs a day in order to thrive. So when you have enough hugs and you actually have true encounters with people around you, not just hi-bye or like wedding style encounters, but something actually go deep and look into each other's eyes and breathe and say honestly what you feel, everything, especially those things you usually put aside. In the combination of living very close to the land, I notice I just have a very connecting result. Not result, a sensation, just a feeling of connection. I would say that many of the transformational workshops are very much in the feelings, but they're doing it indoors in a space that you don't hear the birds, and then you can go very high, but you lose connection with the earth. And here you can't lose connection with the earth. I mean, people they see some apples on the floor, and suddenly they start asking, wait a minute, isn't there pesticides here on the apples? And it's not like they eat all organic at home, but when they actually see where the food grown and they feel more connected to it, they start asking questions out of care to themselves and the food. So the trips are basically a collection of things that I learned that are creating a greater sense of connection and encouraging true encounters. So people leave their cell phones at home, and that's a big distraction. The screens, all these screens are a big distraction that takes us away from where we are and who we are with. That's so rare, just that by himself, to be able to experience with a group of people for 3 days without a cell phone and without even checking or thinking about checking the messages. What else? What happens when you come to the meeting point without a vehicle, and a few people who kind of go around it and still park the vehicle and then kind of confess later. The fact that they park their vehicle in some starting point of a trip, and the possession of this expensive machine, and thinking about it being in the dark over there, or thinking about needing to go back to it, is also a distraction. And we carry minimal sleeping equipment. And we don't bring tents, so we co-sleep, and we make one bed out of all the mattresses. And also sleeping so close without even a small gap, just sleeping in one bed together, looking at the stars and being in the dark together. All these have very simple yet profound connecting qualities. So people come on a trip with different intentions. It could be somebody who works in Tel Aviv in an office but have difficulties with his employee or with his mother, or they have difficulties changing their lifestyle, and they can come to a meaningful, we come back to the education with the children, a meaningful experience, and they learn and get empowered to manifest their vision, whatever it is that it's their own. And people come again and again to the trips every time with different visions, different intentions, and in the last 3 years we just celebrated 300 people who came on the trips. Many of them came many times, and that's already definitely all of my friends, and also the people who are in the circle. Most of their friends are from this group. I know I don't keep in touch with all of them, but I know several who have their best friends are from the trips. So this is not a tribe yet of people marching the earth together, but in the summer we're doing 2 week long trips where we subsist solely on what we find. But it's really, after very, very short, you realize it's minor. The subsisting on what you find, you learn the plants, you eat what there is if it tastes good. That's the background. The foreground is the human animal experience of encountering ourselves, each other, nature. And it's so simple, and sometimes it's also so sad that that's just kind of rare to have these things. It's rare. Like I can go travel the world, visit rainbow gatherings, but the fire is always on in rainbow gatherings. They always turn on the fire. On the trips we let go of control of fire as one of the suspects of humanity's fall from grace. And as I said, we discovered the quality of watching the stars. And just now there was a rainbow gathering ended in the Golan that ended up in 13,000 dunams of forest burnt, just because the use of fire. It's also knowing our limit. When we use fire, and we're in this number of population, there's a very good chance that it'll be by accident. We're not perfect. We never use technology in a perfect way. So you go, and some people burn their toilet paper after they use it, or they make a small fire and they think they turn it off, and it's just a mistake of an instant can create so much damage to the little nature that's left in this area.